Thanks for the download. If you're enjoying the pod series, then please follow The Unconventional Soldier on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. If you can, leave a decent review, share it with a mate, and help us keep these stories of soldiering and history alive while supporting military voices that rarely get heard. Positive reviews and recommendations really help bring us to the attention of new listeners. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram and LinkedIn, so we'd be grateful for follows over there too. If you want to help keep the mic on and the episodes flowing, then head to the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. Every brew keeps us in the fight by lowering production costs, and many thanks to our recent contributors. This week's guest is Mick Cook, a former helicopter crewman in the Royal Navy. The conversation begins with Mick's enlistment in 1971 as a junior naval air mechanic and details the culture shock and rigorous nature of his initial basic training. Mick talks about working on aircraft carriers and other deployments before we discuss his flying operations and experiences during the Falklands War. He describes anti-submarine warfare, known as ASW missions, the demanding flight conditions of the South Atlantic, and the emotional impact of combat and casualties. Mick's narrative also highlights the flexibility and vital role of helicopter crews during the conflict, transitioning from ASW to vital troop and cargo transportation. Let's crack on. Mick, great to see you, mate, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no problems. Absolutely.
What made you join the Royal Navy, and what year did you enlist?
Well, I left school in 1971 in April, and I left a bit early. I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in any subjects whatsoever. I just wanted to get out, and with my friends who were a bit older than me, they were all fetching money in, and I had nothing. You know, just a couple of quid a week, which went a long way in them days. So I left school and I got a job as a plumbing and heating engineer at a place called Shook-Smiths at Stockton-on-Tees. But I was getting more expenses, like £1 expenses every week, and just over £1 per week payment as an apprentice. So I thought, this is absolutely useless. I wasn't knocking around with some bad boys. They were all good boys, like, you know, but at times he says, oh, let's do this. Let's break in there. Let's break in there. And I thought, well, not for me. So I said to my dad one day, I'm going to join the Navy. And he was over the moon. He says, best thing for you, get out of here. There's nothing in Shildon, County Durham. Get out of here. So I went to Gunner House at Newcastle. When I was there, I think it was the sergeant, he was telling us all these things. He was showing us all these pictures of helicopters and of medics carrying, bodies and injured people out of helicopters. And I thought, that sounds good. And he says, you want to go in as an air mechanic if you like helicopters. Well, in Shildon in 1971, you never saw a helicopter. And I thought it was great. So I actually signed up as a junior naval air mechanic, brackets, airframes and engines, second class. Although I've only seen one or two helicopters before, like, come a couple of months later, in September the 6th, 1971, Diana Ross was number one with I Am Still Waiting. The Tams were going high on Hey Girl, Don't Bother Me. And Rod Stewart was just waiting to get in there with Sailing.
Oh, no, so that last one, mate, was probably an indicator for you.
It was, yes, yeah. And that was my mum's favourite song in 75 when the Sailor song was on television.
Had your old man been in the forces at all?
Well, he says he had, but the only fight he did, he says, was in the NAFI queue. I don't think he was ever in the forces. I know he wasn't. But my great-granddad was. You know, I've got the medals in my cabinet here of World War One, and he was a sailor.
Oh, okay, so a nice native connection through the family there.
I never met him. I was only one or two when he unfortunately passed away.
Where did you go for your basic training, and what was that like for you?
Well, when we left Banktoft Station, I remember as a few lads, there's one lad who joined the army just before me, and within a couple of weeks he was back home saying, you'll never stick it, never stick it. So I jumped on the train at Banktop Station in Darlington for that direct straight through to Plymouth. And there's a few lads getting on, and straight away there was a bit of a bond there, you know. Where you going? Plymouth? Are you joining the Navy? Yeah, let's talk, like, you know. And then were the times when you had the compartments on the trains. So it was about 4 or 5 of us, like, you know, all sailors, like, you know, picking up at Sheffield and Yorkshire, Leeds and Sheffield and as Birmingham as you went down the road, like, you know. And yeah, there's a bit of a bond there straight away, like. And it turned out most of them lads were in your basic training class at Raleigh. But when we got to the other end there, screams and shouts and get on there and get your baggage and who you looking at, standard attention and all that. And that's before we even got to Raleigh, because you had to go down on the Torpoint ferry from Plymouth Station, Torpoint ferry over there. And that's all you would do, is screaming and shouting at you. And of course, this was late-ish in the evening. All you wanted to do was find a bed. Then when we saw these dormitories, like 60 or 70 in the dormitory, and you had a bed and you had a small locker and all that, screaming, shouting and all that, I thought, I don't like this. However, things turned out different.
Was it a culture shock for you? We talk about the 70s and the 60s, people being a bit hardier. I joined up in the 80s, and it was very much similar to what you've just described there, and it was a blooming culture shock for me, and I was wondering, what the hell am I doing here? Did you have that moment as well?
Yeah, I had a few moments like that, and there's times because you couldn't get all your parents, because there's no mobile phones them days, press button A on the phone, press button B, put your 20 pences or 2 pences in then, and there's times. But there again, there were so many lads there, the same age as, I was only 15, the same age as you, and they all wanted to do it. I enjoyed the sport, so the sport got us through there, but the actual... it was terrible. Although I left school quite early, I had no education really, and I failed the basic naval maths English test. I mean, you pass it when you spell your name right. I, unfortunately, with quite a few of the lads, because of the shock of being there, that we failed it, and we had to spend an extra week there doing solely maths. And anyway, passed it. Because of that, that was a big shock. All your mates that passed the course, they all left, and you had to do another week there. So you lost it. Some of the lads were flying out to Singapore and all around the world, the seaman type ones. But because I was a WAFU, what they used to call the aviation boys, our next point of call was to Leon Solent and do your basic engineering course. So that was the first big shock. And the other shocks were getting shouted at and up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes you felt like you were the village idiot on the parade square, high port arms with your 7.62 SLR and dub around the parade ground. And all the instructors were shouting and screaming. And you thought it was funny. But, looking back, what a knob. What a knob.
I think
However, saying that, Colin, if I saw the instructor now, I know he was a Petty Officer Kelly, an Irish lad. He was a right git. But if I saw him now, I'd buy him a pint. I think them 6 weeks, it was about 6 weeks basic training down there, it broke you and put you back together again. Yeah. So when you went to your next course at Leon Solent to do your basic engineering course, then you were a bit more ready for it, although only 16.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very, very young, isn't it? So you've done your 6 weeks basic, presumably marching around, how to make a bed, all the basics of military discipline, and then you turn up at your aircrew training. How long was that for?
No aircrew, man.
The engineering training, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think it was about 13 weeks. But then, you still hadn't done your kit muster, so you're still in uniform. You still couldn't go out the gate without uniform on. It was just the basics, right? How do you work out the basics of an internal piston engine or something like that? And of course, everything was started right from the start and you're working through. But the lads that you were there a week beforehand, when you got back classed, they were still there, but they were the course in front of you. So you still had lots of friends there, which helped. The accommodation was a lot better because there was only 10 years in a mess, I think, at HMS Daedalus. You had to march everywhere as a class. The food was a lot better, but you were getting shouted at all the time by the petty officers when you marched up and down to, I think it was called Esmond Hangar. When you went in there the first time, so all these helicopters, thinking, wow, I'm going to be working on these. And it was quite good, actually. So you were perked up, you were ready to go. You'd had your kick up the backside from HMS Raleigh because you were being the village idiot. And from there, it started working, and it was quite enjoyable, actually. But it was a struggle at times. Again, coming down to the maths working this out, working that out, like, the pounds, how many pounds of fuel goes into an aircraft, what's that in gallons, this, that, and the other. But it all started coming very slowly, like, I would say I was a late developer, but that was my own fault, like, and of course I ended up 34 years as the senior naval warrant officer, like in charge of standards, in charge of all the air crewmen in the fleet. So, it worked up.
I totally agree, mate. I think I often get angry when I read in the papers about, for example, the apprenticeship college for the army at Harrogate, and you get a lot of people saying, taking people in at 15, 16. What they miss out is the aspiration that the military can give you. And you're a 15-year-old kid from the Northeast, and you end up in a very senior post in the Royal Navy. Your hard work, but the Navy helps you do that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. From start to finish, like all the courses. And I used to keep saying to the lads, what course have you got? Chainsaw course. What use is that to me? Do it.
Yeah.
Do it, like, health and safety course. Do it. Oh, it's dead boring. Do it. Get that under your belt and do it. So, I was doing as many courses as I could when I was in the Navy. I even did an aviation course just to progress myself. Nothing to do with the Navy, but one day you're not in the Navy anymore, and one day you're going to be a civilian. And if you can get these qualifications, your transition from Navy life into civilian life might be easy, which it proved it was very easy for me.
Yeah.
So, I finished out at HMS Daedalus, had my final kit muster, be able to put all your kit on, all your civilians on, like, that you brought down from the Northeast 8 weeks, 9 weeks ago, putting them on again. You find out how slim you'd become because all the running around, all the decent food.
Yeah.
All the bolligans off the chefs, like, one sausage instead of two and this, that, and the other. But everything was, I think, working you to be a better person. And it was hard work, but, we went out to Leon Solent, and after about 13 weeks, you were set free. Away you go to your first squadron, which was exciting. But down at actually Leon Solent, we all got a flight round in the Admiral's barge, which was a Wessex Mark V, and jumped in a helicopter and, flying around Leon Solent. Wow.
Was that the first time you've been in any sort of aircraft?
I'd been in when Manchester United won the cup in 1960. Right, Celtic, I think it was 67. I saw that in Palma de Mallorca, and that was the first time I'd been in an aeroplane. And the next time was, in the Admiral's barge. But seeing this thing just lift off, vertically take off, and you all sat in there, all young 16-year-olds, apprentices, so to speak, like, it's brilliant.
Eyes wide
Brilliant.
open. So you turned up at your first unit then, and you're qualified as, and I get the exact title wrong, Mick, give me a bollocking, but you turn up and you're basically a helicopter mechanic, without being too insulting?
A junior naval air mechanic, brackets, airframes and engines, second class. Now, when you finished the training at HMS Daedalus at Leon Solent, went to Portland. Portland, height of the summer season in Weymouth. You pitch up. You're still a junior then, so you have to live on board. But I thought, couldn't believe it. What am I doing here? The height of the summer season in Weymouth. Everything was great. Like, you had a few bob as well, like, because the Navy pay wasn't too bad, actually. You had a few bob, and we're around HMS Osprey, which is around the side of the dockyard. So you had to go through the dockyard to get the accommodation. Was only 4 in a mess. And the squadron itself, it was Wessex Ones, which was like a search and rescue squadron. And, they taught you how to marshal. They taught you how to get on the head, like, no health and safety in them days. Get on the head, like, these days you have to have harnesses on, crash helmets and all that. Get on the head and spread it and, put the pins in. Have pins start, which didn't need oxygen to burn. If you got that in your eyes, it hurt. Then all of a sudden, like, you're qualified. There's a thing called you have to be qualified to maintain. So you've got to go through all these things on that specific helicopter, which was a Wessex 1, on 771 Squadron, go through it all. And once you're good enough, you have to do this little exam and you're qualified to maintain. So you can go out there without a supervisor on your back at all times. Obviously, menial tasks to start with, like, like wiping the aircraft down with PX-24 or WD-40 in them days when there was lots of it about. The next big step was qualified to sign. So once you get qualified to sign, which was a couple of weeks, actually in a classroom, you had to go through all the mod forms, like, it's called a mod form 700, where there's part 1 is this, part 2 is that. You have to sign part 4, part 7 is limitations, this, that, and the other. So everything was against you if you weren't like, you had to get stuck in, basically.
I mean, you're still
you thought
18, 19 at this point, weren't you?
16.
So, I mean, it's a lot of responsibility for a 16-year-old. If you're signing a 700 series, which is basically saying airworthiness and safety as well, I would imagine.
That's right. Yeah, 16, 17 going on there. Yeah, it was lots of times where you had to, do before flights, check the fuel, check this, check that, and sign for everything. I did fall foul once, and the lad who trusted me, he didn't do his job, I didn't do my job, and I got done for it, and he got done for it being basically the tail collapsed on it, which I forgot to put a split pin in, and because of my stupidity, this ball had vibrated off, the pin had fallen out, and the undercarriage collapsed. He turned out to be a very, very good friend of mine. We both held our hands up. He should have checked it. He didn't. But again, I learned from that.
Yeah, I bet you never did that again.
Oh no, I got fined. I think I got fined £5. He got fined 10, which was a lot of money in 1972, 73.
Can you talk us through then your career from then up until just before you deployed in the Falklands? Just give us an overview of how your career progressed.
I enjoyed it about 2 years there. I passed my driving test down at Portland, so I was over the moon. Then all of a sudden, with the Ark Royal, they had the fixed wing. The Eagle had just gone out in 71, I think. So they had the HMS Eagle and the HMS Ark Royal. I remember sailing at Juniper Point. I think Juniper or Jupiter Point. We were sailing there, and the Eagle and the Ark Royal were together. One of the lads says, I wouldn't mind getting on one of them, massive, massive boats. Never seen a boat like it. Massive. And I got sent to RAF Honington to go on the Buccaneers. Most of the lads I was with went to RAF Lucas on the Phantoms up at St Andrews, and some of them went up to RAF Lossiemouth on the Gannets. So when we got there, quite a few of us, and all of a sudden, going from helicopters, which was scary, going on to Buccaneers, which, they could suck you straight in the intake, blow you out and all that, which was dangerous. And we had to go through the same, I wouldn't say rigmarole, but we had to go through the same stuff again, qualified to maintain. You're already qualified to sign, so you had to go through all these courses, gas turbine engines, this, that, and the other. And these were a lot bigger than helicopters, these Buccaneers, a lot more solid. And when they jumped in, the pilots, when they jumped in the cockpit, you had to get up there with them, take the pins out of all the seats, eject a seat, take the pins out, so the canopy could be ejected, anything, do the back seat, the observer in the back seat, so there was lots of responsibilities. There's some nasty pilots, some brilliant pilots, and from there, it progressed and progressed, went on the Ark Royal for the first time. And this must have been as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old now. No, maybe it's a bit more, a bit older, 75. So I was being close on 1920 then. And first time on a flight deck with all these phantoms burning and turning. Absolutely scary. And I was a naval air mechanic, second class then. So I lost the junior rate. I was a naval air mechanic then. And the pay increase was quite substantial, actually. It was good. But the work you put in on there, all these aircrafts were all lashed down to the deck. The aircraft carrier had to turn into wind to actually take off. Once it turned into wind, the wind was gushing down there. You had the phantoms going, they were on the jet blast deflectors. There's lots of wind, fumes coming from them. And you had to unlash these aircraft because the ship's still moving about. Unlash the aircrafts when the engine started. Take the chains off, take the wing struts off, take the ladders off and push these up the deck. And now for the big hefty boys, it was hard work. It was hard work for anybody. And of course, when it was raining or anything, it was terrible. So after a couple of years on there, I was pleased to get down into the hangar where it was nice and warm, nice and all that. And when you come on watching, says where's 2-0's up on deck. He's like, two zeros in the hangar, like, oh, champion, nice and warm, like, take it easy, go on the weather deck when you want for a cup of coffee and all that. Whereas when you're on the deck, you're cold, wet, and miserable. But on the brighter side of that, first time we went abroad, we went into San Juan, Roosevelt Roads, a big American.
I've been there.
Went in there, and of course, you do a thing called Procedure Alpha, where all the sailors get on the deck like in their uniform and they come in. All the doors are all closed down in case you hit anything or anything. And I wasn't on that Procedure Alpha, but I was in the flight control office. And I opened the porthole and I looked out, and all I could see was palm trees, blue seas, white sand. What the hell is this? And this was the day, 73, 74, something like that. This was the day when the old Cadillacs were still going up and down, and I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely outstanding. I thought, I've done the right thing here. And of course, I was on the Buccaneer circuit for quite a while. 1975, I think Queen was number one with Bohemian Rhapsody. I went up to Lossiemouth, and I did not like it up there on the Gannets. So I had to try and get on the gun crew, just to get away from Lossiemouth.
Is that the Royal Tournament, putting the field guns over the walls and stuff?
That's the one, yeah. I wasn't air crew. I was just one of the spare hands, so to speak. But it was fantastic. And again, down at Leon Solent, 1976, the long hot summer. Dear me, I was like a bronze god. Yeah, everybody was. We had to get up early because there was a water shortage and hose the track down before anybody saw you. Because right next to Leon Solent, there was a housing estate and people could see in. So we were up very early hosing it down, but that was great. And from there, I went straight back onto the Buccaneer circuit for the last cruise in 78. And 78, it was just, we were all over the place. It was outstanding. All these places we went to, we were in Florida for 7 weeks, at a naval air station called Cecil Fields. That's when the F-14 Tomcats were coming out, and all Americans were laughing at our Buccaneers, how old were they, with a windscreen wiper up the front where the Tomcats had the hot air and all that.
I'm sure the Buccaneer last flew in anger during the Gulf War. Am I correct in thinking that?
I don't know. The Navy Buccaneers went out on about the 15th of December 1978 when we come in. Now, they might have gone to the RAF to 12 Squadron or something.
Right.
But the Navy Buccaneers, we no longer had them. And the carrier finished then, So the jobs I had, I wasn't too impressed. Corrosion, rubbing aircrafts down and respraying them and all that, which was boring as anything. Then 720 defect recorder, which was all the documentation for the aircraft. You had to go through and check everybody's had put the right codes in. And, we sat there with a white front on and sat in an office all day, making the chief his coffee, this, that, and the other. Then I went on to security. Now, when I went on to security, I had one of the best fleet chief bosses in the world. I won't give his name, he's not here any longer, but he was absolutely brilliant. A good friend who turned out to be one of my best friends. He come in and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry about this, and you." And he was from Trimden, the northeast. Yeah. And he come in and he was bulling this and bulling that. And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I'm just doing the me aircrew course." I says, "Oh," he says, "Yeah, it's great. You want to do it?" And I thought, hold on. Yeah, it sounds good. That. He says, "Yeah, you get these Gucci watches, you get extra pay, you get all this, that, and the other, and you do something different every day." He says, "But it's hard." I thought, "Oh, right." And I talked to my boss, the fleet chief, and he says, "Well, if you want to do it." On the same token, up the top of the island, I used to play football with a lot of the lads who were air crewmen. And they were saying, "Oh, it's great, do this. I'm on the Wasps. I'm on the Wessex 3s. Oh, what am I doing today? I might fly down to Cold Rose, with a pilot. Then we'll go and intercept a ship, and do it." I thought, that sounds great. Of course, I was still security. So these lads talked us into it. And I put in 4 air crewmen. And I was very lucky. I went through on the on the course, the basic aptitude course. And I got through that. Then I got offered an air crewman's course down at Culdrose in 79. And that's when I went for it. But I was still living in Portland, still up at the Kimberlin Club, like at the top there, enjoying myself, playing football for the team and all that. And I loved it. But going backwards and forwards to Culdrose, for your basic air crewman's course. And that's when I started air crewman's course. And
how long was that?
Enjoy it. The basic course, I think, was 13 weeks, which was the BFT, basic flying training. And that's when you go through everything, basically, winching, hyphering, helicopter in flight refueler, winching, dead reckoning navigation, everything to do, meteorology, air traffic control, a lot.
So I take it, just to get my listeners' head around this, who might not be familiar with how aircrew work. So I take it you are training to be the guy that we call it the load master in the army, the guy in the back of the helicopter is responsible for everything that goes in and out of the helicopter, helping the pilot land, take off, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, it's not... Basically, the pilot is the taxi driver. And you, in different aircrafts, have got different crew compositions, the ones I was down on the Falklands with had 2 pilots, 1 observer, 1 crewman. And they all had, the pilots obviously flew the aircraft. The observer was the tactical brain, basically. He's the navigator. And you were the ASW, you were on the sonar.
Right.
In that particular Mark II or Mark V Sea King. In later life, I got shot of all the sonar and I went into the Mark IV Sea King, which was the jungly one, which was for the commandos,
Right, got it. So
all it was 2 engines, the rotor blades, 1 airframe and nothing else inside it.
Right.
So I went through for the course and passed it flying colours. Yeah, BFT. Then you got a choice where you wanted to go. I went anti-submarine warfare. Some went missile aimer, which was on the Wasps, which were going out anyways. And some went onto the Mark IV Sea King. But I went through there. Then we went back to Portland. We're going through all the course. There's a couple of lads on there, instructors, absolutely brilliant. Passed that course, flying colours. Then back to Culdrose. Culdrose went on to the passive course. Passive course is where you throw the sonar buoys in the water and all you do is listen. In the back of the aircraft, you've got all these pins going up and down, and they paint the picture with lines.
And this is hunting submarines, correct?
This is, this is just the passive stuff. Each submarine, as you I don't know if you know, they've got different lobes coming out of them. So the sound. So, you put all these sonar buoys in the water and you just listen and listen. When a submarine closes, it's got Doppler shift on it, and everything's getting closer and closer. Then you put more sonar buoys out and when you get right to the final solution, you go in there in front of them, put in the sonar body, lower the body into the water and get another aircraft to come and hit them. But that was way off, But I struggled on that course. I wasn't too keen on it. I didn't want to just jump into the back of a helicopter, pull all the blinds down, put a machine on. So I could have done that in the cleaning gear cupboard, That's exactly what it was like, So I actually didn't pass that course. I wasn't bothered. I was quite happy. I was going to go back to be a mechanic. Air engineering mechanic, but because I've gone so far and almost got there, they put us active only, which means I'm just in the back with the sonar body, lower the sonar body, start pinging, put sound in the water, and take it from there. Now, this is when it all gets to the Falklands. My first job when I left the Naval Aircrew Advisory Board at Seafield Park at Leon Solent was in 81, late 81. In fact, it was early 82. Early 82, I got sent up to Prestwick to meet my new squadron, which was 824 Air Flight. They were doing Operation... I forget what it was called. but they were actually going out to Carlingford Lock, which is down between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and supplying it was basically a patrol vessel, winching all the goodies down to them and coming back. And I got straight in with that, and no problems. It was enjoyable, good flight, good set of lads. And the pilots were good, the boss was superb, and that was great. And all we were doing there was just that for about 20 odd days. Then we went to Dumfries and Galloway. We had an old Navy hut up there. We went out there just to do it up a bit, a bit of R&R. Then we sat around this big fire, and out of nowhere, these two police pitched up, Dumfries police. He says, "Are you the Navy crew?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "You've got to get back up to your base straight away." Of course, there was no mobile phones or anything then. And what's that for? There's an intruder in the Clyde. It could have been a Russian submarine. It could have been anything, So we had to get up there straight away, put sound in the water, lots of sound in the water, and it ended up, there's nothing there. Nothing there. Then the boss come in and he said, "Who knows where the Falklands is?"
This is so British, isn't it?
Yeah. It's up Scotland, isn't it? Well, apparently there's a bit of trouble down there. We have to go back to Culdrose. All right, fine. So I went back to Culdrose, thinking nothing of it. The lads got back early. They went on leave, actually. They were on the way home to leave. And I think that, April the 2nd or something? And the boss come in and he says, "Hey, we've been placed on 4 hours' notice to embark because there's a lot of rubbish happening in this Falklands place." Now, they say that some of the lads had gone on leave, they go as far as Exeter, and the British Transport Police, there's tannoys going out, is petty officer this, is AEM this, and that. Are they all on the ship, all on the train? Yeah, we are. Right, get back to Culdrose. Why, what's going on? There's something big going down. And by the time they got back, we were told that we're on a couple hours' notice now to embark on RFA Almeida with 824 flight, and we're heading south. And that's all we got, but there's information coming in all the time. So I think it was April the 4th, we sailed on RFA Almeida, coming out Devonport, and there's lots of people on the side there waving and all that. And again, we still didn't know what was really going on. We know we're heading south, but we thought, we'd get into the Bay of Biscay, have a fag, have a cup of coffee, and come back. But no, the Hermes, the Invincible was there, everything, we're all sailing together. Then people started thinking, how far is it down there? 8,000 miles. It's going to take you, it'll be all over by the time we get there. Unfortunately, as you well know, it wasn't. Yeah. And we kept sailing and sailing. Some of the lads on board all the lads on board were fine, but we were the civilians. And some of the civilians, I didn't sign up to go to war. Don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, And somebody says, are we the only tanker going down here? For the time being, I think Tidespring was down there, another tanker. But he was way behind us. He says, so if we get hit, we knackered. He said, yeah, we'll be crispy critters. We won't hear much about it if we get hit by anything. We've got aviation fuel, we've got furnace oil, and of course, our mess deck on there was just above the waterline. What come in just above the waterline?
Exit, yeah.
So anyway, the civilians, they were brilliant, but the bar was getting shut. They were told they were on war pay, which is a lot of money. A lot of them were happy, but they were still unhappy about having to go all the way down there. And say, once we got closer and closer, things started going. We got put into defence watches. On the way down there, all we did was hit the deck for the pilots because we were getting down there. I think it was just the start of their winter, April, May, start of their winter, and the decks were rough. The pilots had to take off and land on these decks, which was difficult. They had to do poor visibility approaches because I don't think we had a helicopter controller on there, like an air traffic controller. I think the smallest ships around us did, but we didn't. So things had to be done. We had to do self-control approaches. The observer had to steer us onto the ship. So a lot of things we had to do. We had to do HIFAs, helicopter in-flight refueling, just in case we couldn't get on the deck where we had to winch the refueling gear up to the aircraft, coming to a steady hover. So we had to do lots of things. And the main things that we're doing on the way down there is a thing called jump X, where there's two aircrafts. You're both pinging away. One gets a contact. However, you need to keep them in contact. You want that other aircraft to break dip, raise the sonar body with the depth charges, with the Mark 46 torpedoes, go around, and where you've got that contact, the observer who sat next to you, he steers our aircraft right on top of it and drops the depth charges. So we're doing lots of that as well.
Had you flown in conditions that severe as you experienced in the South Atlantic during this training?
No, some of the times. And there's a couple of scenarios, really, that when we left down there, we were doing VRTREPs, vertical replenishments, where the helicopters go pick stuff up on their sling underneath the aircraft and transfer it to another ship. So when we left, I think when we left the Ascension Islands, we still had lots of stores which were in the wrong places. So we had to keep moving them all around. And there's this one horrible, dirty night. And there was a Mark IV and it kept coming on. And at times it hit the side of the deck because you got the SACRA, which is semi-automatic cargo release unit. That's the big strap that hangs underneath the aircraft. Then you got 8 foot of basically string rope, whatever you want to call it. Then you've got the load underneath. So there could be 20, 30 feet below the aircraft. Now, trying to get over the aircraft, all comes under the con of the crewman in the back. He's hanging out the door, talking constantly to the pilot. Now, the pilot's trying to keep references with the ship going up and down. Sometimes they had no lights on because, they were emissions control silent. There were no lights policy. You didn't want the enemy to see all these lights. So it was difficult for them. And of course, one particular night, we lost, there's a lot of paint got smashed against the side of the ship. Paint, not essential. And our flight deck officer was doing his nut, absolutely doing his nut. Why are we doing this? Why can't we do it tomorrow when it's a lot better? And it was, unfortunately, the aircraft crashed. Now, I remember that was the first casualty, and I think it was HMS Yarmouth. Ourselves were told to hold back and continue searching for a couple of days for this one person. Obviously, we couldn't find him. The rest of the fleet had sailed south. And I always remember having a cup of tea in one of the nets. This was before we got into the exclusion zone, so things weren't too bad at the moment. And it turned out to be one of my best friends, who was lost. The chief quarters, and he says, do you know that lad on that? I said, oh, what's it like? He says, oh, it's Ben Casey. And I thought, oh, you are joking. Ben Casey was in my football team up at the Kimberlin Club, and him and my wife on a Saturday night used to get up to the police and dance the night away on the dance hall up there. And that really hit me, and I thought, whoa, is this getting serious now? And that was one of the points. We looked everywhere, trying to find a life jacket or anything but nothing at all. And that's when it really sort of hit me that, this is getting nasty. And of course, all the time we were just hearing snippets of information from America, from Thatcher, from, is it Lord Carrington?
Leading the peace thing, wasn't he?
Come on, lads, have we? We've had this is good now, we've had our facts out, we had a laugh, let's turn around and go home. But no, and of course, the further you got south, the more ships that you looked around. And the ship I was on, the Almeida, the actual ships that were coming up for fuel, just nothing at all. All of a sudden there's a big whoosh, and there's like a Type 21 or a Type 22 or a 42 coming up. The lads would get the derricks out, lines would go over, quick suck of fuel, and they disappear back onto their picket lines. And that was so impressive. I've got a list here, and there's hundreds and hundreds of RASs that this ship did. And of course, we were still the only ship, so we were like the HVU, like I've said. We were in between the Hermes and the Invincible. So if anybody gets hit, then it won't be us. Imagine being in the middle of the South Atlantic with no fuel.
And were you continuing to do your primary role as anti-submarine? Hunt?
Yeah, well, we're doing that. But I think when we left the Ascension Islands, there was submarines in the area. We don't think they were Argentinian ones, because just going off Jane's, they're fighting ships. Like, they only had the Guppy class, which was an old American submarine, and they had two 209s, which were German diesel ones, which, you know, anything Germans make, which they should be quite decent. But we never saw anything of them. The officer of the watch, one day, he says he saw a periscope up. This could be, you know, it could be the Americans snooping, could be the Russians having a look, like, you know. Then we got the 2 aircrafts airborne, and we just put lots of sound in the water, basically to scare them off. And once you get in the exclusion zone, if any of these vessels are in there, and, you know, the world has been warned that this is now an exclusion zone, like anything in there might be, you wouldn't get the Americans or the Russians in there. It'd only be the Argentinians. But fortunately, you know, never materialized. So when we actually got down there, we went into, we're in defense watches, but we were pinging all the way, sanitizing all the area, making sure there was nothing there. We had lots of false alarms, whales, kelp, big, you know, hundreds of tons of kelps just floating. You were still getting the same echo from them as what you would get for a submarine. And it was moving as well, obviously with the tidal flow. But we did lots of hours. I've got my logbook here. I mean, I could just read it off, like, you know, I'll go down about 3, screen X, surface searches. These are all, like, you know, 2 a day. And of course, with the surface searches, you know, when we lost the Ark Royal in 78, we had no airborne early warning. So if we had the gannets that could get right up high and, you know, put their radar screen around, we could see all the aircrafts coming in from, you know, the Super 8 and Darts, the Skyhawks, wherever they had. But we didn't have that, so we had to do lots of searches ourselves. But obviously we couldn't get the radar coverage of what the others would.
Did they? Sorry, mate. Just a quick question. Normally in peacetime, you have flying hours, don't you? You can only fly so many hours in a 24-hour period. Was that all kicked into touch once you were in operations?
Yeah, that kicked into touch. We had 3 crews on our flight, so it was all kicked into touch. I'll show me hours later on. Like, you know, some of the times it was 10:45, 10:25. You know, flying. I mean, the RAF had them. I don't know if they had them when they were down there. In fact, I don't know if the RAF were down there, actually. I know they had the Chinook down there later on.
They had some RAF Harriers flew off, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yeah, they did. They had the Harriers there. They could only stop airborne for a while, Harriers, like, you know, then you have to come back for fuel. But, we were doing lots of surface searches just to identify any ships there. But you couldn't get too close to them, because if they were enemy, they might shot at you. A helicopter is an easy target because they're only very slow, like, you know, 100 knots or something, like, but we did lots of them, and that's when we wanted the gannets. Then when we got in the exclusion zone, it was just watch on, stop on. It was, it was tiring. We were doing lots of, ping X. We were on the screen all the time because these submarines still hadn't been detected. And there was always a threat there, like, they would just ping, 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 come back, have a couple of hours, like, you know, refuel the aircraft, get airborne again. And that went on, and we're getting about 100 odd hours a month down there, which was a lot. And it was tiring. As times you used to sleep in your flying overalls because you knew you were getting up very shortly to go again. And everything was going well, we thought, until the first bombs and bullets started going with the Belgrano. with the Sheffield. And all of a sudden, like, everybody's eyes were wide open.
Was that quite a changing moment for you when the likes of the Sheffield went down?
It was, and we were there, actually. We were there. It was right southeast of the islands itself. They have the picket lines. They were right up in the front, like, the Sheffield and another one, because they had the Sea Dart. And the Sea Dart missile was taking down anything flying-wise, like from altitude and all that. And I always remember that day, I've got it in my logbook, that we were there pinging away, ping, ping, ping. And the pilot says, "What's that contact over there?" And you write 1 o'clock something. The observer says, "Oh, that'll be the front line, that'll be the pickets." Says there's a lot of smoke coming from there. And we were told it was the Sheffield area. Then we were told to go and investigate. When we went there, the site that we saw, like, there was a 21 close to it. I think that was the active. I'm not sure what ship it was, but they were quite close to it. And they obviously had gone in for the casualties. I mean, we were told to, once we'd done our business and reported it, get back on the screen, because we don't know where that's come from. Is it a surface attack or is it a subsurface attack? Is it a submarine? Is it in the grain? If it's in the grain, it can easily get its firing solution, and it could hit anybody. So we're just pinging away. Then that's when people started getting trigger happy. There's lots of kelp. There must have been lots of whales as well, like, because we were dropping depth charges left, right, and centre. The Mark 46 torpedoes we had, we started to run short on them as well, like. But once we found out it was a surface attack, like an Exocet, I mean, it was terrible, but I felt so relieved, because I thought I'd let something in.
Oh, right.
It was pinging away and I missed it. What's that contact there? Oh, it'll be all right. It'll be nothing. So I was quite relieved on that. But yeah, all the survivors come off there, and I think it was about 4 or 5 days later when they were towing it away, trying to salvage it, it sunk. But yeah, it actually didn't go off the Exocet. I think it was just the rocket fuel that set everything on, and lessons were learned that day. Then, yeah, after that, I also remember I used to go down and get the signals from the signals office, like, and we didn't get much information, like, on the World Service or anything. So with the World Service, like, yeah, do we get information from there? Where's that come from? And you had the Brian Hanrahan and all that on, he was on one of the carriers.
Yeah, counted the signals out and all that sort of thing, wasn't it?
Aye, that's the one.
Yeah.
But the, what was I saying? Yeah, the signals, I used to read them before I give them to the boss. And, when the signal on there, like, we knew there was a nuclear submarine down there, SSN. We knew it was one of ours down there, like, and we knew he was tracking something, but we didn't know. Then it was, I saw the information, I think it was the Burwood Bank. They were well outside of the exclusion zone, but they were possibly a pincher movement, come round, like, and hit our lot. And that's when it was told to sink it. And we were told, the signal I read, I was looking at it, is saying communications difficult with the SSN. This, it didn't say General Belgrano, but it gave it some name, saying waiting for authorization. Then you look through the signals and 5 or 6 signals later, this vessel has been attacked and sunk. And I was like, what? And I'm in the middle of a tank deck, waves coming everywhere, like, reading this thing, bloody hell. Keep my gob shut, and I went up and see the boss, and he looked at it, and he could see him. What?
So it actually shocked the pair of you that the British had sunk this massive battleship. Yeah,
it did. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the Sheffield got rid a couple of days later, didn't they? So yeah, that was, yeah, we had war, lads. Come on. And of course, these 2 diesel submarines still hadn't been found. But the Gubby class, which is the American one, that had been caught at Grytviken in South Georgia. Yeah, it was Georgia, yeah. That'd been attacked by a couple of a Wasp and a Wessex. They put these AS-12 missiles through the Conan Tower. So I think the captain did. That's it. Yeah, it's a gubby class, like, I think it's a World War II American one, which we're no use whatsoever. However, when these submarines, when they're on battery only, they're very difficult to find. And I found that quite a few times when we're doing the commanding officers courses up at Prestwick when I was stationed up there. I had a thing called a COCEX, where the submarine commanders, or the potential submarine commanders, they had to get in and do pictures of this, that, and the other. Once they went on battery, very difficult. Once they were snorting, they had to come up and charge the batteries up. Then they were easy targets. After all that, it was, well, we were back on the screen, I think, until we were told to go ashore. So we're on the screen, then we wanted 2 aircrafts ashore, and that was something I'll never forget. That, because we ASW, anti-submarine warfare, we're not frontline troops, we're not army boys like you, we're not weapons specialists, the 7.62 or the 9mm SMGs and all that, yeah, we know what they are. We had a GPMG in the back of the aircraft, but weren't really trained on them. Then we were told we're going ashore, and somebody says, I don't know, we're not, it was cold ashore, it was wet, it was miserable and all that, and we sailors, for goodness sake. No, we're not Marines, we're not Army. Then all of a sudden we're ashore, and our air engineer officer went onto one of the ships, and he come back, and he had all these SMGs, the submachine guns and all that. And all of a sudden, how would you work these bloody things? And you had bullets and all that. Sailors with guns.
I take it your mission hadn't changed. You were just going to be hunting for SOVs, but land-based at this point.
No. This is completely different now. Because the bridgehead was in there, they needed to get the ships in and get all the stores off. So we were load lifting all the time, going in, picking loads up, taking it, dropping it to shore, going back, picking it up, backwards and forwards for 10 hours a day, or as much light as possible. But we had these machine guns and all that. I don't know. We were walking around like John Wayne, all strapped to our backs. Then when we finished the day, where we were going to stop, there'd be 12 by 12s or 10 by 10 tents. All these were put on the side of the hill. And I was the lucky one because I had the centre pole underneath me arse, so I wasn't sliding out the tent. It was on the side of a hill like that, and all the boys in their blankets, they didn't have sleeping bags or anything. This is everything we borrowed or stole off the Invincible or the Hermes. So they were all sliding down the bottom, and they're all on top of each other. And I've never been so cold. But there was somebody there all the time, waiting us up every 20, 50, 30 minutes or something. Air raid warning. So we all had to get out of the beds, freezing and all that, just stood on the side of a hill. This is night time. So I weren't expecting them in, because I don't know if you know, San Carlos Water, it's all hills all around, so there were no way they were going to come in and attack at night time. Anyways, we were there for, I think it was 3 nights. The second night and the third night, they put us up in this old, it was like a crofter's place, but it was solid and it was warm, and we weren't sliding out there, and the blankets we had were a bit better. But in them 3 days we were in, it was just backwards and forwards with loads all the time, But because the loads were so heavy with ammunition and fuel and stuff like that, you can only take so much fuel. You can't go above, I think it was £21,000. If you started going above that, everything started talks when all that, you're putting lots of stress and stuff onto the aircraft itself, easy damage them. So we couldn't take much fuel. But as we were backwards and forwards, every time we used to land on the Fearless or the Intrepid, one of the two, they used to rush out there with the fuel, just give you a quick suck of fuel, bacon sandwiches, cups of coffee. I thought, this is brilliant. Now, the 3 days I was there, we didn't have it. We had lots of air raid warnings, but we didn't have anything materialise. And I think that's because, I don't know if the rabies sites had been established then, but you couldn't see the tops of the hills. So it was bad weather for the A4, the Skyhawks, to come in. But we had a plan every time that we got airborne, right? If there is an air raid warning, that's the ground we go to dead ground. So they can't get a firing solution on you. And that's what we're doing. But he says, well, you can take the GPMG off the side. But by the time he got the GPMG, took it from the back door and jumped outside of the rotor disc. Obviously, you don't want to fire up through the rotor disc. Took it out there. The Skyhawks would have been back in Argentina in the aircrew refreshment bar having a cup of coffee. So that was it. But we were lucky in that way that we didn't see any action. I saw the Antelope or the Ardent giving it the V signs as it was going down, which was terrible. Then we went back to sea, back on the Almeida, and basically from there we were still on the screen because these submarines hadn't been detected, these 209s. But we think, well, I've since read lately that one of them, was it the Santa Fe, I think, they wanted to go out and do damage. But they reckon they fired a few torpedoes at the ships. If it's true or not, I don't know. But according to this commander, I think they fired at the Alacrity, which was down there. But as soon as the torpedo left the submarine, I mean, it just went useless. So was it down to bad maintenance? Was it down to poor crew composition? But we were lucky in that way. Once the Belgrano was sunk, they all disappeared and all went back to base, which was quite easy. But I think their Air Force, were very good.
They were very brave, weren't they? Because they had to fly from the mainland, and they only had a couple of minutes in San Carlos, didn't they? But I remember seeing pictures of helicopters describing the role you were doing, and there's a Super Étendard or another Argentinian aircraft in the background. So it was a crowded and dangerous airspace.
Yes, it was. Yeah. I saw the pictures. We saw the signals when we got back, and it was quite dangerous. So we were lucky to get back to sea. But there again, we had the problem with the Exocet when what ship got it with the Chinooks and all that?
Atlantic Conveyor.
Atlantic Conveyor. Yeah. Now that was another really moment that I was nearly in tears, because one day we were doing all of our CASEVAC and picking them up off one ship and putting them on the other. These poor sites were coming up with a gash bag, the personal their belongings, and that's all they had on. And it was sad, and you pulling them from one ship, putting them on another ship, on the hospital ship and all that. And they knew they were going north, they're getting out of it. Job done, well done, lads. And there's one time I was pulling it up, and I looked down at this face, and I thought, bloody hell, I know him. Who is it when I come up, he looked at me and he was confused. Who the hell are you? I know you. Put him on his seat, into the aircraft. And he could see my name on the back of my helmet. And he come up, and halfway through a winch, he come up and he tapped us. He went, Mickey Cook. And I turned on and he looked. It was Sandy Sanderson. Now, he was a proper old and bold chief on 809 on the Buccaneer Squadron with me, and 78. And he was a proper jock. I demand everything off you. You call me chief. I demand respect here, that and the other. And of course, being a junior Joe in these squadrons, he was God.
Yeah.
And he'd come down on the Atlantic Conveyor or something as a Matsu team, a mobile air repair and transport unit. He'd come down as one of them, but he didn't get too far. Then he had to go back up north again. But seeing him, me and him were cuddling with somebody dangling on the winch coming up. And it was so good to see him. And and that time I could call him Sandy. I would,
but an only time.
3 years I wouldn't dare call him Sandy. He'd have been chief. But that was a good thing, that when it cheered us up. And things went on. We were still at sea, still doing the submarine hunt, and which didn't materialize, like I said. And that's when the boys started going down to Goose Green and round Pebble Island, this, that, and the other. And they were starting to expand. So really, from then, we didn't have much really to do. We're just pinging away. Then our ship, when was that? 20th of June, we were told, go down to South Georgia. Why? Why do we want to go? Because there's a place the South Sandwich Islands, Thule Island, surrounded by icebergs. I said, what? Yeah, we wanted to go up there, pick up 40 Commando, M Company, who were just itching for a flight. They hadn't been anywhere. They hadn't been in the Falklands. They'd been at South Georgia. There'd been nothing at South Georgia, like, and they were just, I want to punch you. We went in and picked them up, 42M Commando. Then we sailed down to the south. On the way down the south, the weather, blizzards, this, that, and the other, going down and, watching out for icebergs, seeing all these chunks of ice coming past you. But because the threats down there had been assessed that there's going to be no submarines down there, what's the point? There won't be any Argentinian submarines down there. We took all the sonar gear out, took everything out so we could get all these troops in the back. And on the day of the assault, it snowed. And so I've got pictures on my computer there, and you can barely see the troops getting in, all in white, all ready to go, tooled up to the eyeballs. In fact, there was grenades rolling down the deck.
That make your heart roll, right?
Oh, yeah. Our flight deck officer wasn't the best at times, but he was having heart attacks. Anyway, we got all these boys in, and we took them, and the snow was horrendous. We didn't know really where to go, and we just landed. When we landed on, all the snow was disappearing. They just went straight for the, it was a meteorological place. That's all it was. And I think there was about 11 soldiers down there, but they were all Met officers, And of course, by the time our lads got in there, all the gear was all smashed up. All they wanted to do was go home. Take me home. We don't want to be down here. Yeah. So we picked them all up, brought them back on the ship, and things started relaxing a bit then. They had them on the ship. We took them back to South Georgia, kicked them all out. The prisoners, the M Company wanted to go. Then we got this signal, go home. Of course, Stanley had been secured then. We'd had everything, the Bedivere and all that, they'd been hurt. But Stanley was secure then. We were told to go home. So we're on our way home. We had a massive, massive pump over with one of the tankers, at Pearleaf, I think it was. And on the way home, we'd only been going about a day or so, and says, get yourself home, get some leave, and you're coming straight back down. So we had a couple of days leave when we got up there, refreshed, and come back down again for peacekeeping duties. And that was to rebuild Port Stanley, Navy Point and all that. The Gurkhas were all in there now, building accommodation and all that. And from then, it was just as required by Commander Land Forces. And I've got my logbook here. And from there, it was just, here we are, 10:45. As required by Cliffy, Commander Land Forces, Falkland Islands. 10:45, 9:45. You don't do hours like that these days, but we were just going until we were almost exhausted. And, it's quite mental when you're doing load lifting or winching. Talking all the time. The pilots up front are knackered because they have to concentrate on the ship where you're going to, making sure that the ship doesn't hit you. And so it was really difficult.
The margins there for an accident are quite slim, I imagine, taking into account what you've done the preceding weeks. Complacency can set in because you're tired, and the dangerous becomes the routine.
Yes, yeah. That's when the RAF come down, I think the Mark IIIs. But we had all the Arabia sites established on the top of the hills. I don't think the war was over then. Although they'd surrendered, I don't think they'd actually come down and say officially the war is over. We still had, their aircrafts like incursion going into the 200 exclusion zone, just putting the nose in and disappearing again. So everybody was still ready to go. But we went down there and there's mines everywhere. And we stopped. This is the second time we detached to a place called Lively Island, which is just south of the island. It's like a crofted place. And we had the two aircrafts there. The crofter says, there's an old hut over there. You can use it. And there's 15 of us or something, approximately 15. And we went in. He says, there's an old vehicle in there. It's never run for 30 years. If you can get it going. Now, this lad who I got done with at Portland when I was a baby, he was now the chief tiff, and he was so clever. And he got this old, I don't know what, old American truck going, like, he got it going. The crofter was amazed because we didn't need any spare parts or anything. He'd botched it up. We were in the house, all the central heating in there, all the hot water going in there. The roof was all repaired. And we kept going down to the local river, and all these brown trout were coming out. We lived the life of luxury down there. And that was the second time. And, of course, we had to go back the third time as well. And it was getting quite procedural then. There was rules and regulations. So we couldn't take the lads down, like, out of the minefields, drop them off for a couple hours, go task and come back, pick them up with a bucket full of trout. No, because the wardens were starting to go around then. So that was my time down the Falklands. And I loved it. I really did. Loved it. And looking back now, it doesn't seem close on 50 years. I still have the reunions with the lads. We're still, all the lads keep going to these ones. We had one at Portsmouth in June. And it's just good to see the lads are still going. There's some old lads, some really old lads now. There's a couple haven't made it back, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that's all happened in 82, 83, 84. Then,
looking back on it now, Mick, I often ask people this question, and sometimes people say to me, "Oh, who am I to give advice to the contemporary naval person, army person, or Air Force person?" But do you think, what lessons from your Falklands experience do you think are still relevant to today's Royal Navy?
Teamwork. Lots of teamwork. Preparation. Unfortunately, there's quite a few things that we were down there we weren't prepared for. Like it says, the guns. Getting these guns, maybe it was an oversight, I don't know. And basically the will to win. One of them things. Yeah, I lost my mate down there straight away. Yeah, it hurt. It really hurt. Like, what was the all? Right, let's get these. Now, I don't know if that's anger, but certainly there's quite a few things that I think the ships today, they build for it. Unfortunately, there's too many rules and regulations coming in. Maybe it's health and safety.
I mean, one of the things I recall from my reading about the Falklands, and I've had a few guests on who fought in the Falklands with the Army or the Marines, and they've got nothing but praise for the helicopter crews that took part in the Falklands campaign. From things like the rescue of the SAS troop on Fortuna Glacier, those helicopters that did that. The flexibility that you guys proved, the fact that you went from anti-submarine warfare to ferrying loads back and forward and then acting as troop carriers. I think just the flexibility of that force to just do that multitasking was essential.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, the Fortuna Glacier, that was just incredible. One went in and ditched. The second one went in to pick them up and ditch. And I think it was the Wessex Mark III. The one that's in
is that?
Yeah, that's the one with the big hump on the back. And that's the one that's in the museum at Yeovilton now. Picking up so many, there must have been, and the pilot himself, Stanley, I think I call him, Ian Stanley. He was one of my instructors on ASW. So as a pilot instructor, he didn't have much to do with this. He was just flying the aircraft and doing what he was told. But I know he was a smashing bloke. And there's another bloke, I lost a couple of mates down there. Although Ben Casey was the first one, the Glamorgan, when that got hit, when I found out who was on there, it was my instructor from Portland. He was my ASW, and another football player from Portland itself. It was a nasty left back. He used to be, he'd just kick anybody. Fred, absolutely. When I heard them two had died on there again, that was, again, really heartbreaking. But unfortunately, it was just shrug his shoulders and get on with it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I interviewed a guy from the SAS called Mark Aston, and he was on Fortuna Glacier.
Yeah.
Also, he was in that helicopter that went down where the 18 guys from the SS got killed, along with about 2 or 3 of the Navy crew members.
The Pebble Island?
No, this is when they were cross-decking between 2 ships, and the helicopter went down, and there was about 18 SAS guys killed, and a crewman.
Glove. Yeah. I know it. Yeah.
He was on both of them, and also reading them, the accounts of that flying and what those helicopters went through and the guys in them went through, it put you off going to helicopter for life, mate, in those conditions.
Yeah.
I always remember that when we'd be out in the fields in South Armagh and the weather was clagging in, we'd been on patrol for a couple of days, when you get allocated a Royal Naval call sign, you did a little jig in the hedges because you knew you're always going to get picked up.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's times down at Besbrook, getting into bed, like, the RAF Puma boys have been there for weeks on end. We've run out of flight limitation time. Can you Navy boys go and do? God save me, flying for 10 hours.
Mate, could kiss you. Soaking wet through, been out in the cuds for a couple of days, and you'd turn up, land in a sixpence, and take you off. Could have kissed you.
I might have picked you up one time there. I don't know. That was on the Mark IV Sea Kings.
Yeah, I had a great time, mate. So normally finish off, I think, called Desert Island Dits, Mick, which is what you'd take to Desert Island with you, and that's a book, a film, luxury item. So first of all, what book would you take to Desert Island?
The book which I haven't completely read. I'm not a great book lover, I must admit. But there's one I've halfway read, and you're going to laugh at this. The Hunt for Red October, Tom Clancy.
All right, yeah.
I've been reading that, and I've seen the film, but the book, I pick it up, I read a bit of it, then put it down again.
Is that a bit Busman's Holiday? Is that a bit like a Busman's Holiday, Hunting Submarines, a fictional book?
No, yeah. It's that. It's the Russian submarine. It's got the Caterpillar control, which is top secret, and the Americans are chasing after it, and they all want a bit of it. And it's all underwater stuff, and they're touching each other nearly. And I've seen the film, and Sean Connery's in it, but the book is slightly different. But one day I'll get to the end of it.
What film choice would you pick then, Mick?
I've always been interested in the alien thing. I mean, yeah, I enjoy watching them. I do like these films, like, but there again, I'm not a great movie lover.
What luxury item would you take then?
Being a matlaw that's been in the field all the time, a bar of soap. Come here.
I thought it'd been a bottle of rum or something.
I don't like rum, but on certain occasions when you're up in Bardafoss and you've done the basic survival course up in the winter, you come back and you have to splice the main brace and all that. And I hate it, but they force you into it. Yeah. And I haven't got the will to say no because you've got all your mates around you.
That's it for another episode. Thanks to our guest for coming on, and to you, the podcast listener, for your continued support and suggestions. Please keep them coming, and our email and social media links are at the bottom of the show notes. You can find us on all the usual suspects, including Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you download us from iTunes and like the podcast, it'd be great if you could leave us a review there or anywhere you get your podcasts from. Finally, thanks again to Nick Beale for his continuing help and offering technical support for his company ISAR, and we'll see you next time on The Unconventional Soldier.